The salvage yards of Kepler Station sprawled across 3 kilometers of twisted metal and forgotten dreams. Among the graveyard of derelict vessels, one ship stood apart, not for its grandeur but for the stubborn old man who refused to let it die. Garen Miles ran his weathered hand across the hull plating, feeling the grooves where micrometeorites had scarred the ancient metal. The ship had no official designation anymore, just a forgotten registry number that had been scratched off decades ago. But Garen knew what she was, or rather what she had been. "Still wasting your time with that wreck, old man?" Garen didn't turn to face the voice. He recognized Vex, one of the younger salvagers who thought everything old was worthless. The Krillian's chitinous face always twisted into what passed for a sneer when he saw Garen working. "Not a waste if you're learning something," Garen replied, continuing to scrub away the layers of oxidized coating from the ship's access panel. Vex clicked his mandibles in amusement. "Learning? That thing's been dead for longer than your species has had warp drive. The architects abandoned it for a reason. Even the scavenger drones won't touch it. No valuable materials left." Other salvagers had gathered now, drawn by the daily entertainment of mocking the human who cleaned a corpse. There was Thesic, a hulking Bronthan whose 4 arms could tear apart a fighter craft in minutes. Beside her stood Quinn and Mala, a bonded pair of Vezran who ran the most profitable salvage operation on the station. "He thinks he'll get it working," Thesic rumbled, her laugh like grinding stone. "As if human stubbornness could resurrect architect technology. Their civilization died out 2 million years ago." Garen finally paused, straightening his back with a wince. 73 years old, and every one of them seemed to live in his spine. He turned to face the crowd with the same patient expression he'd worn for the past 6 months. "Maybe that's exactly why it needs someone stubborn," he said quietly. "Everything worth doing seems impossible until someone's stupid enough to try." The crowd dispersed with laughter and jeers, but Garen had already turned back to his work. This wasn't about proving them wrong. This was about respect. Respect for the ship that had survived eons when everything else had turned to dust. Respect for whoever had built her, poured their genius and hope into every circuit and frame. He'd been a mechanic for 52 years, started on Earth fixing combustion engines, worked his way up through fusion cores and quantum drives. He'd seen technology that was supposed to be impossible. He'd fixed ships that other mechanics had declared dead. And 6 months ago, when he'd first seen this vessel buried under decades of debris, something had called to him. The access panel finally came free with a hiss of ancient seals breaking. Garen peered inside with his headlamp, illuminating conduits that seemed to pulse with a geometry that hurt to look at directly. Architect technology wasn't meant for human eyes, but Garen had learned to interpret it, to feel the logic beneath the alien design. He spent the next 4 hours tracing power lines, clearing corrosion, replacing fused connectors with carefully adapted alternatives. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, each motion born from decades of understanding how things fit together. The other salvagers had gone home. The station's lights had dimmed to night cycle, but Garen worked on. It was near midnight when his scanner detected something impossible, a faint power signature, barely a whisper, deep in the ship's core. Garen's breath caught. In 6 months of work, every scan had shown nothing but dead systems. He traced the signal, crawling through maintenance shafts barely wide enough for his aging frame, until he reached what could only be the central processing matrix. The chamber was spherical, walls covered in crystalline structures that seemed to contain frozen starlight. And at the center, suspended in a field that shouldn't exist without power, was a core that pulsed with the faintest azure glow. Garen approached slowly, reverently. He placed his hand on the access node, and for a moment nothing happened. Then the glow intensified, spreading through the crystals like dawn breaking across an ocean. The ship shuddered. Deep in its bones, something ancient stirred. Lights flickered on throughout the vessel. Not the harsh white of human technology, but a soft, organic luminescence that seemed alive. The air itself began to hum with power, and Garen felt the ship awakening around him like a giant opening its eyes after an impossible sleep. Then came the voice. It bypassed his ears entirely, resonating directly in his mind with a quality that was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It was the voice of something that had witnessed stars being born and dying, that had crossed the infinite dark between galaxies. Garen Miles! The mechanic's eyes widened. The ship knew his name. Somehow, impossibly, it knew. Designation. Echo 9. Extended hibernation cycle. 2,400,612 years. Systems at 7% functionality. The voice paused, and Garen could have sworn he detected something like wonder in it. You persist, you repair, you remember. Remember? Garen whispered. I never knew you existed until 6 months ago. No, but you remember what it means to care, to see value in what others discard. The architects built me to wait, to watch, to find those worthy of legacy. The crystalline walls shimmered, and Garen saw images not with his eyes but with his mind. He saw a civilization of impossible sophistication, beings of pure energy who had built ships not as tools, but as companions. He saw them scatter these vessels across the galaxy like seeds, waiting for the right hands to find them. Why did you clean me, Garen Miles? Why waste your time on a dead ship? Garen thought about it, about all those months of mockery and doubt. Because nothing that's been built with this much care deserves to be forgotten. Because every machine has a soul, even if people can't see it. And because, he smiled, because I'm too stubborn to know when to quit. The ship's laughter was like music from a dream. Then let us be stubborn together, Garen Miles. Let us show them what humanity has truly earned. The following morning, when Vex and the other salvagers arrived at the yards, they found Garen's ancient wreck hovering 3 meters off the ground, wreathed in impossible light, and the old mechanic standing beneath it, grinning like he'd just figured out the universe's greatest joke. They never mocked him again.